Namaste. I welcome you to my podcast, Holistic Conversations, with your host, Mamina Das. Join me in my journey, in all of our journey, because we are all unique and we are the universe. Welcome to Holistic Conversations. Namaste, everyone. I welcome you all to our podcast. I don't want to say it mine because it's not only about me, but it's about my guests as well. So, welcome to yours and ours Holistic Conversations podcast. Today, we are going to talk to somebody who is studied international relations and communications and minored in the study of women and men in society at the University of Southern California. He had a mystical conversion experience during an introductory class on women's studies and became a founding member of the Students' Alliance for a Non-Sexist Society and founded a pro-feminist anti-pornography organization. We have never really explored anything about this so far, so I'm really looking forward to learning more about it and listening to his work and how he continues with this journey in his life. His name is Richard Procida. So I welcome him now to the podcast. Namaste, Richard. Welcome to Holistic Conversations.
Namaste. Yes. Hi. Thank you for having me.
So my pleasure. And I would like to share that I really have never had experience of getting into this topic. So I am looking forward to learning more about this.
Okay,
Let's
good.
first get to know a little bit about you
Okay.
and your journey. Yes?
Yeah. Well, I've have a long journey. I did have a near-death experience when I was a kid. So, and that sort of set me on a path and gave me some allowed me to access my ability to do divination. So I have that aspect. But I did grow up a survivor of sexual abuse. And it was I think I would have to say it's pretty severe. And it wasn't just one person, it wasn't just one time in my life. And it's really something that has actually didn't end. You know, I I thought it was going to end um, maybe in high school when I became adult. Definitely when I became adult, I thought that the abuse, or at least what I perceived as abuse, would end, but it didn't. Um, and the effects are quite devastating. The effects are quite devastating. I mean, it's a very confusing experience for a child or a young man or a young woman. We often think of a sexual assault as something that is violent. But I think the reality is, the idea of grooming is the seduction of a child.
Okay.
So this becomes very, very confusing. And it leads to a lot of different behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure at what point that it just built up. And I think that in my young adulthood, it just, I think that was the final straw. I'd gone through being a little boy. I'd gone through being a teen, different women.
I'm not able to hear you. I'm sorry. Your voice is
But
cutting out.
I'm sorry. Let me move a little closer here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
Sorry for interruption.
it's okay. I'd gone through being a little boy.
Yep.
I'd gone through being a teen,
Yep.
different women. And then as a young adult, none of it really ended. And of course, I have my own concerns, my own behaviors that are the result of this. And um, so everything's all mishmashed up.
Mm-hmm.
But as a result, I had terrible problems with women. I didn't like them. I didn't like women. I mean, I liked them as far as being attracted to them and wanted to have relationships with them, but I didn't like the way they acted. I didn't like how they behaved. And even when it came, and this is where I'm not sure when this came about, even if they were strippers or the way they acted at spring break was upsetting and disturbing to me and threatening. So I couldn't enjoy those things. And even now, I mean, and then I don't know, I grew up with what's called the blue pill. I mean, I was red pilled in some ways, but most men, and I should talk about what the red pill is. I just tell you,
Yes, please.
yes.
Yes.
So, but I was red pilled. A lot of men are red pilled in a particular way that they have been abused, taken
Mm-hmm.
advantage of, and exploited. And but they don't know about the other ways that other men are taken advantage of, abused, exploited, other men and boys, I should add. And so the red pill is basically, it has a lot of, there's a lot of different ideas about it out there, and different people use it differently. But it basically comes from the movie The Matrix. I don't know if you've seen it before, but in The Matrix,
Yes.
yes, the character Morpheus offers, I don't know, I forget what was his name, Nemo, I forget, but it offers him the choice between a red pill and a blue pill. And the blue pill puts him back into the reality that everybody sort of lives in, but it's not the true reality. And the red pill takes him out and he can see the reality. And also as a result, he ends up having superpowers, um, as well. So, and the red pill is really about women's behavior from evolutionary psychology perspective, from behavioralism and the idea that behavior trumps words, and um, men's lived experience. And my route of this, okay, so it's really, in my opinion, the original red pill and whatever it's become afterwards, and however other people use it. Some people use it for different things, but originally it's designed to help men understand women, their behavior, and how to be successful with women, things that our fathers didn't know and didn't teach us, and things that we've been taught wrong. The blue pill is being taught wrong. The idea to just be yourself, the idea that you want a woman to love you for who you are. These are all blue pilled ideas that are not reality. And the red pill is the bitter truth. And you see that it's very painful at first to discover that everything you thought you believed about women, or a lot of things you thought, were just embarrassingly wrong. So when I was in college, I knew I had difficulty with it. I knew I had a lot of difficulties. And so I took a course in the study, introductory course in the study of women and men in society. And just as an aside, I could not make it through the fraternity. I could not tolerate it. Um, and I had a lot of issues with pain. You know, after
With
what with pain for
pain,
days,
okay?
pain for days. I had a lot of problems with that. I'm being told these things. A woman's after your money, she's no good, and that was my fundamental belief. And so I
Wow.
had a lot of, but what is a sorority? It's a house of prostitution, essentially. And I wasn't really um, didn't have money and didn't feel that I should have to pay. After all, I didn't have to pay for all these women taking advantage of me. Why should I pay for that? Why should I have to pay? Was my thinking. I didn't understand, or didn't and did that the market is what forces you to pay, forces men to pay. So, but anyway, I I caused some problems in this class. But one of the things is every time I walked out, there were two midterms and a final exam. And after each midterm, I had a vision, kind of like the vision of Paul on the road to Damascus. As I'm walking out of the room, I saw bright light,
Wow.
and so, or a being of light, as Paul saw on the road to Damascus. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that story, but Paul is on the road to Damascus, and Christ appears to him
Right.
and says to him, "Why are you persecuting me?" And after the third time, I had gotten in trouble for this because I made an exclamation. I said, "Whoa," or something like that. And the teachers thought I was interrupting the class. And so the last time, the third time, when I made sure to keep my mouth closed, because I was told, if I disrupted the exam again, and I aced all these exams. And so I kept my mouth closed, but I ended up being unconscious in this big light, and of course people may have thought I had a seizure or something like that, but I knew I didn't because I had this it's an ineffable experience. A seizure comes with an aura, it has negative effects. This had positive effects, a sense of that I had learned something, but I didn't couldn't put it into words. But on the third time I recognized that this was similar to Paul's wrote on it, why are you persecuting women? Because if Jesus says, why are you persecuting me? He's talking about everybody. Why are you persecuting women? And so I got involved in the Students Alliance for a Non-Sexist Society. I created an organization called People Against Pornography. I wrote articles. I ended up writing a book. Um, I kind of burnt out on everything, but in the end, at law school, yeah, I wrote a book, and my views have changed. My views have
Wow.
changed over time. So, called Social Issues in Global Perspective Pornography. It's part of a series of books on social issues in global perspective. And so that sort of like, again, like Paul, God, I had our God called a writer. Paul wrote books and he wrote most of the New Testament, um, or a substantial portion of it. And other portions are attributed to him. So, but what I found, I sort of burned out in law school. My views changed over time. Um, and then when I was dating, and more recently, jump all the way over to my 50s, right? I'm with a woman that I don't really like. And
Wow.
I'm just happy to have a woman come over to make love to me once a week. That's all. I mean, but as far as hanging out, didn't really tolerate her. And so I had to make a move. And one time I sort of tricked her into admitting that she had been with somebody else. And I decided this is the opportunity for me to make that move. So I broke up with her and I started to look at dating coaches. And what, there's a lot of anti-male propaganda and there's a lot of anti-red pill propaganda out there where women have said it's a threat. And I think what you have, there's a whole propaganda is all over the place. And sure, there's propaganda on the left, right, just with the red pill. There's a lot of propaganda being spewed into there. But what they're telling you about women is true. And so, but I didn't know anything about women. I realized that even though I had studied women's studies, I had studied feminism, I had written articles, I had written a book. I went to a law school that was founded by women, and
Wow.
I knew nothing about women until I discovered the red pill. I knew very, very little about women.
Wow.
And then I started to have success. I started to have some measure of success. The dating market is still horrible right now. I'm coming to a realization now that how horrible it actually is. Um, there's a lot of things that are going on, and these changes in society have been devastating to our relationships. And it's equality, the pill, um, a change in technology, and those two changes, there's probably more than that, but those two changes have dramatically changed the game. And but also there's a lack of change. There's a lack of change. I talk about,
Lack of change.
yeah, there's a lack of change on the part of women. That
Mm-hmm.
men have changed. We don't catcall women in the streets anymore. We allow them to supervise us. We allow them to judge us, right? We treat them as equals. Women have not changed.
I'm listening.
Yeah, women still expect a man to pay for stuff,
Do?
still expect a man to die for them, still expect men to, um, you know, do, there's no change that women are offering. In fact, a lot of men feel that women are offering men nothing. Oh, the other change, well, the red pill has led to a wave of promiscuity, and women are sharing men. There's a saying, a woman would rather be the mistress to a king than the wife of a pauper. And so strip shows and male prostitution are examples of women sharing men. So if women don't need men for money anymore, which is actually anti-male propaganda that's being spewed out there to threaten men. If women don't need men for money anymore, and they don't need men for sex because they can buy that, they can go to a strip show and buy that, and they can get the man they really want to have sex with, right? Then what ends up happening? And also on top of it, the main thing they think they'll change, they require men to earn more money than them or to be higher status or higher um, wealth. There's something called hypergamy. Have you ever heard of hypergamy?
Yes.
Okay. That women date up in class status and wealth. That and men correspondingly must date down. They have to date poorer women or women who have less than them. If a man cannot out earn a woman, out status a woman, he can't win her heart. So if women have equality, then really it doesn't work. Our system is based on inequality. Our relationships are based on inequality and differences and compatibilities. They're not based on equality. Our relationships are not based on equality. They're based on inequality. That's why men pay, because women didn't have any money, right? That's why men pay. But now it's just an exploitative practice. And so, what happens when women earn and make the same amount of money as men? Well, what happens is that 30% of them end up alone and childless. 30% of men end up sexless and alone. That's what happens when women have equality. And so, what is the solution to this? Well, I have a saying, it's women's turn to change. Women have to learn of that, accept that the men are going to be equal to them. They're not going to be superior to them, particularly in finances and money. They're not going to be superior to them. Right? So women have to change. They have to make what I call an accommodation for equality. They can't continue to expect men to have more. They can't use men as a ladder for economic advancement. They have a ladder for economic advancement. It's called work. It's called business. It's called entrepreneurialism. In fact, women have contributed economically to the family before 1950s, before the Industrial Revolution, which is another change that has made technology, which has affected our relationships. You know, so, oh boy, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, so
You were talking something about 1950s.
yeah, the 1950s, women, um, they made real economic contributions. If you're working on a farm, you had to wash clothes by hand, you had to bake and cook from scratch. The women's work was unending and probably still is, but women's work, they contributed in a huge way, even though the man may have went out and took care of
Hunted.
the animals,
Yeah.
hunted or took care of the animals or whatever, and did the heavy lifting. The women had a real contribution, but all of a sudden you come to the 50s and we start to get this, I want to be a kept woman.
I want to
I
be
a kept woman, a woman that is kept up, who is paid for, who is pampered, sort of a pet.
Oh,
And
okay, okay, got it. Yeah.
right. And this was never the case, really, not for most women. Most women worked hard. And so all of a sudden now women feel like they are entitled to men's money, entitled to men to maintain their lifestyle. This was not, before the 1950s, this was not primarily the case. Women contributed, but now what they have to recognize is that their contribution is their job. Their contribution is their work. I mean, maybe they can't come home and bake from scratch and wash with their hands anymore, but the idea of having these machines to do all this work led to Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique. I don't know if you read that book.
Mm-mm.
I did, and I did when I was in college. And Betty Friedan was one of my instructors at USC. And the idea was that women were unhappy at home. And she had one joke in the book, kind of a joke, that they discovered the washing machine. And that time, those washing, they shook, they rattled. And so you get this image of women sitting on washing machines at home, you know, to be stimulated sexually. So that women had so much more potential. And not every woman wants to be at home. In fact, a lot of people don't want to be at home taking care of the kids. It's not, and and so that started the second wave of the feminist movement. And but anytime a man brings up the issues that men are facing, we commit suicide at 4 times the rate of women and 8 times the rate of women after a divorce. You know, we make up something like 97% of workplace deaths. You know, men have this responsibility to go to war and die for women. Now, women will always see they have this innate sort of built-in inability to really empathize with men. You know, their life, their struggles will always be worse, will always be more burdensome in their minds than men. In fact, there's a saying: women don't care about men's struggles. They hang out at the finish line and pick the winners, which is so true. If you're struggling to make a living, if you've got a struggle, women doesn't care about that. They don't have it built in to care about men who don't meet their standards. And it's evolutionary in the sense that, they're the sexual selectors. They're selecting the genes. And they have two types of men that they treat differently. One is the alpha male, oftentimes called, I don't know what the language bears, but the alpha sex, alpha um, seed or genes, you know, good looking, big, strong, the good genes. And then they have the need, the beta need for, it used to be a need, now it's just, you know, an entitlement for financial support, for a man who offers stability, maybe the good dad. And so they are in a struggle all their lives in a way to find both of these characteristics, and they would like to find it in one man. But more often than not, you're not going to find that in one man. Not only not going to find that in the man, most women are not going to necessarily find the alpha male. So they have their avenues, you know. And so for that, and like I said, a lot of women are choosing to share men because there's a limited number of men that they actually want to be with. They don't, and if they don't need a man for money, and they just want a man for sex um, and entertainment, there's a lot of reasons they want men. You know, they want some men for sex, they want some men for money. And, you know, and so the situation really is dire. It sort of sucks for a lot of men. Now, I happen through this process to now find a woman who I'm living with, and I'm coming to the realization of how horrible it was in the dating market. Some of the things that ran into women and said, I will pay for nothing. Other women said, why is it so hard to find a rich man? Women expecting you to have a house, a new car, and the dividing line is, do you have or earn more than me? You have to have a sufficient income for that woman to consider you. But I had a lot of problems too, and there's a lot that goes into this. But, um, you just can't get past that, how horrible the situation is. There's just one experience I'm going through right now that I've been it's this idea that has come up over of auctioning men off for charity.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that to Black people. You can't do that to women, but you can get away with it with men. And that's a lot of what women can get away with a lot. And so, and can men say no? No, they can't say no. There's social repercussions for saying no. If you say no, I don't feel comfortable being auctioned off. No, it doesn't make me feel good to be put on an auction block. You will be retaliated. A man will be retaliated against. Oh, why not? And is it really for charity? How much of it is really going for charity? When you look at it, sometimes women are taking a cut. And then they'll bring in the strippers and sell those men and buy those men. And there's a difference. A woman doesn't have to pay. Men have to pay. We go to a strip show, we go to prostitutes. Women pay. That's what they do. They charge. That's women's modus operandi. That's how they act. This is something that women do. Prostitution is female behavior. And so, um, but women don't have to pay. So what are we for? What is the guy you're going out for? What is the guy you're dating for? Why are you dating him? I mean, you go out to a strip show, and a lot of those strip shows are not hands-off events because gay men fondle and perform fellatio on gay strippers. Women think that they can do the same thing at their strip parties. So you're choosing those men over other men is what's happening. And women are willing to pay for that. Women are willing to pay certain men and yet come to us and demand that we pay for them. So who can have a relationship with that? Where not only do I have to pay for her, I have to pay for my prostitute because where am I getting sex from? If she's getting sex someplace else. And I have to pay for her prostitute. So so the situation is really, really stinks. And it's very unfair to men. And yet there's a lot of anti-male propaganda, such as men are toxic. I don't know if you've heard that one. Men are toxic, you know,
I have heard both sides.
right.
I
And men,
cannot say only men.
yeah, right. Well, yeah, women. And one thing I say, if men are toxic, it's because women are attracted to toxicity. there's there's something called there's a lot of things. First of all, there's euphemistically the bad boy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
attraction to
Dynamic, attracted to certain dynamics.
right, antisocial personality traits.
Mm-hmm.
There's something called hybristophilia, and only women have this philia, this paraphilia of sexual pedophilia for men who commit crimes. You know,
Wow.
you see that these men who commit murders end up getting all these women writing them in jail. But the mass murderers, it's exciting. Oh, you killed him. You killed her. That's so exciting. For women, it's an attraction to this type of antisocial, violent behavior, domination, violence. Men don't have that. Men are never do that. We're not like going and saying, "Oh, you cut off his penis." So that's so exciting. No, we sort of stay away from that. But only women do that, and so there's an innate tendency.
I kind of really not can't agree to you
Yeah.
because I do counseling too.
Uh huh.
So I have heard of different stories like so
Yeah. Well, I like
it's
a woman.
that's part of an experience from your
Yeah.
life journey, but I have heard different stories as well, like
Yeah. Well, I think there is a corresponding idea that men sometimes like the dominatrix. Sometimes they get turned on by being dominated. Generally, women don't like to do that. Women want a
Well,
man. Yeah, generally they
it's
don't.
hard to say yes and no, because we cannot standardize everything. We are all
Right,
different by nature.
right.
So I can only tell from my experience, and you can only tell from your experience. That's how we are different. That's how our entire thought process is embedded. Like, I understand how I have understood things, and you understand from your perspective. So we are different. Uh,
There's definitely a wide differences, and you can't account for every different behavior, but there are trends. There
there are
are,
trends.
right,
Yes.
trends, and then this is more of what we're talking about, the
Yes,
general
we are
trends.
talking about this trend, but this is not generalized.
Well, it is sort of generalized, but it
Yeah,
can't be applied to everybody.
within those trends, yeah.
Right. There are
Yeah.
differences.
Yeah.
Um, and the woman I found, for example, she contributes to the rent. She will pay for a date. She'll split the bill or even pay for it. She'll buy groceries, and she'll do all the housework, you know. So there are definitely differences. And um, but generally women, want a man who's strong, who's a rock, really when they talk about men need to be in touch with their feelings. And
Yes.
I often say that women could care less about how men feel, really. They could care less. They like to tell us how we should feel, right? Um, and what we should
This is a
do.
non-ending discussion, like,
Yeah,
unending discussion, like
yeah. But yeah,
there's
yeah.
yep.
But what is this in response to? In my mind, this is in response to the idea that men kill themselves at 8 times, 4 times the rate of women. Oh, you just need to be in touch. This is women's play, right? This is women's play. And it's not really an adequate response to the situation. It's just putting on men the responsibility for their own subjection, for their own oppression, for their own, and it's not an adequate response. An adequate response, well, let's dedicate resources to men's medical health. Let's look at how we need to change. Let's address some of the men feel very unfairly treated by the courts. Let's address some fairness in the family courts. Let's acknowledge that men have disadvantages and that men need to have the ability to advocate for themselves in their own interest, and that really women have not changed, and maybe there's some responsibility on women's part to change, to make some adaptation and allowance for equality, to see in themselves their entitlement and their privileges, to see how they are privileged, and to so that, and to give men really a break. Men are told to man up. What do we teach women? Where right now there's this, oh, we got to teach men to respect women. We got to, and girls, but what do we teach women? What do we teach girls? We don't teach them to respect men. We teach them, go girl, you go girl, go get as much as you can. Climb as high as you can. When women come out of high school, man, they're swinging for the fences. They're trying to get the biggest, strongest, baddest guy they can. And that's really what it is, that women want a badass who's good to them, somebody who will protect them, somebody who will survive, somebody who will prosper. And that's where the antisocial traits come in. They want a guy who will go out there and kill for them, who now to die for them is another blue pill sort of trait that women sort of expect of men. And so all of these things um, indicate that there's a need for change, and there's a need for change on women's part. And there's a need for men to learn to stand up to women, to learn to, and also to be red pilled themselves, to understand women's nature, their behavior, and and to learn how to interact with women. I had an experience not long ago where this man, he was kind of disabled, but he had a date, and we were standing up in a concert and he fell back, and I sort of helped him, and he ended up doing something. He ended up kissing my hand. My girlfriend didn't like it. The woman he was with didn't like it. You know, this man did not know how to act in front of women. And we're telling these men all these false things. The women are sugar and spice and everything nice is not true. And um, that all men have to pay, that's not true either. Not all men have to pay. Male strippers get paid. When a woman has an affair, she doesn't care about the man's money. When she's having sex with a child or a teenage boy, she doesn't care about his money. There are certain circumstances where men don't pay. And so anyway, but at this point in my life, I've settling down with a woman who I found, and I hope that it's going to work out. Seems like it's doing good, and because the situation in the dating scene is so utterly horrible for a lot of men, um, and I don't want to be, I do tarot readings, and this tarot reading says I'm going to prosper with this woman, right? I don't want to be have to support the idea of having to be a provider for a rich woman is impossible, and I think the providing role is gone. The deal that you get out of high school, you get out of college, and you start to build a life together, that's gone. That doesn't exist anymore, you know. And what happens instead is that women go through what's called a whole phase in their 20s, where they're out partying and having multiple men, sharing men, widespread sharing of men. Financial abuse is rampant. And so right now I've done a lot of things. I've worked on democracy. I did Bible study for progressives, and now I'm working on men's issues. And that's about all I can really do. I'm at an age now where the world's not going to, I'm not going to change the world. The world's going to continue on as it is, but I'm going to be out there trying to help men have a better life and trying to help me cope with the trauma that I've gone through. And right now, hopefully, the second, because I've never been, as a result of this, I never got married. I never had children that I know of. And I've never really lived with a woman either. And this is the first time I'm living with a woman at 61. So,
So how are you experiencing your life now? And
well,
uh,
uh,
and how did you arrive at this journey at
well,
61?
at 61. Right now, I've been dealing with PTSD for a long time, and you know, I'm still dealing with it. And I'm still dealing with the repercussions of the abuse. And so it's kind of hard. I've been struggling all my life, and but at this point, I became got the red pill. I became more successful in dating. I understood that women shared men, so I found a way not to be. A lot of women, they do not lack for sexual opportunity, but men, you know, the lack of sexual opportunity isn't somehow built into the system, and women reinforce it because the more desperate men are, the more money they can make. And so, but right now, um, I'm trying to settle down. I'm trying to settle down. The men come to a point where now they have the money. Now we have what women want, right? Now I've learned of date. I have more success in dating now, you know, and so now I've ended up finding a woman. It's hard when you find kind of what you want, you know, to pass it up when you've gone through a lot of women not finding what you're looking for, finding things that you absolutely don't want, and then also being in having a sense of, being threatened. Like I don't really go to strip shows. I don't go because, um, I kind of like, even looking just causes pain. It doesn't cause pleasure. It causes pain. And so, I guess I'm not good with the look, don't touch type of thing. And so, um, but I've found a woman, and right now I'm I had focused on my career. I saved money. I'm in a good spot. There's a lot of men right now who are going through problems with their relationships, problems with health. And if I were to lose, I have a good job. If I were to lose this job, I've just retired. I'm in a good situation. So, and I could travel around the world, women, and have sex with women in different countries in the world if I wanted to, you know. Um, and so, at this point, you have money, so there's nothing stopping you, you know. And so,
Are you feeling secure and confident about yourself?
secure and confident. I think I feel secure, um, more secure and more confident. Let's put it that way. Um, and I'm more secure financially.
I want to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just want to say that the point from where we started to where we are now, I think
Hmm.
you found yourself.
Yeah, and I think I've been looking. That was sort of I focused on my career when I was younger because I couldn't even get through fraternity initiation. I didn't want to pay for the women. I didn't want to pay for them. You sit in your room, and I was so disappointed. I was so devastated. What I thought when I went to the fraternity, that these women who are in college, you know, that I'm going to be able to meet them, that I'm going to be able to talk to them, that I'm going to be able to go out on dates. All I wanted was a girlfriend. So silly, so stupid to expect to have a girlfriend. They're not relationship material. And so I couldn't even get through that. I didn't want women dancing in front of me. I was guarded, guarded. And
How
so
are you feeling now about yourself?
well, right
Free?
now,
Free? Liberated?
no, no.
Not
We're
yet?
no, men are an oppressed class, just like every other class. I'm freer
You're
than I
freer? Yeah.
freer, but I have my own money now, and I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about that. And that's part of the result of not having gotten married and focusing on my career and not having spent my money on women. Um, and now I feel like I have this part of my life. I can have a woman. I can have a wife. I can have a woman. I can live with a woman now. That's something that a lot of men are doing without. Of course, they've had their wives. They've lived with a woman before. I can have that now. I can, and I'm set up for retirement. I can have a life. I'm in my high earning years right now. Actually, I could retire, but there's really no reason to at this point. It's probably the most productive thing I can do, actually. So, um, so I'm helping people who are um, disabled get federal disability benefits. I do Social Security disability law. And so, um, I'm a little burnt out on my activities, but I need to sort of get back into them because I need to have that purpose. But yeah, so I feel right now that I'm in a good position and that I have been able to find a a decent woman as far as I know. You know, every woman has the potential to do stuff, but so far so good. You know, she does has not. She's from the Philippines. She has not been exposed to this male prostitute phenomenon, and has not been involved in that. We've made an agreement that neither of us are going to do those types of things, and which is probably something I shouldn't do, you know, because you put yourself in a position where um, cheating is, I mean, first of all, for women, it's emotional cheating. It just being intimate with the guy, short of sex, is cheating for a woman. And for a man, you put me in that position. You know, why would you want to put me in that position? You know, if you want me to be true to you. But if you're sending me off to have sex with other prostitutes so you can have sex with your prostitute, then I don't need that. I can pay for my own. I don't need a relationship to have that. So, but sometimes I feel like I need to get used to, you know, like I don't go to burlesque shows. I don't go watch belly dancing, you know. Um, and so right now, healing, but also feeling secure, feeling more secure. And
Do you think you can your ability to trust has is visible to you now? Can you like feel trust and faith?
um, well, it's certainly true that I don't trust women, never have. That's been the main thing. That you know, you go through life as a child, and you see what, and you have experienced abuse at different ages by different women, and then you get into young adulthood, and you're basically available as a you know, you can't afford to go out with the women, pretty women your own age. You can't pay for them. They're all looking for. So you become a Chad for married women. You end up with, you know, and you begin to see and a lot of the things that the bar, the guys who work in those bars and those clubs see. And so, yeah, so trust is not there. Um, but I do recognize that um, the woman you know, that I'm with is probably more trustworthy than other women because I've selected it that way, and she hasn't been exposed to Western promiscuity, and um, so I do have some more trust, but um, men have to be very careful with women. You know, you just can't. And that's one thing about the red pill. You can't. You just can't. There's a trust but verify. Trust but verify. And so, but can I trust myself? Is really more of the issue, too. Can I trust myself? And can I monitor myself? You know, because I have my own issues that have come up around sexuality, and so yeah. So I think a lot of wisdom comes from the red pill and knowledge, and really helpful um, to get a man back on the right track. But it comes around with a bunch of propaganda, and the politics sucks from the red pill, you know, these red pill guys. And I think the solution, just like women, go turn to their programming, you know, and end up creating a sort of polygamy where they really hang out with a smaller subsection of men and tend to share those men. Men turn, following their program, start to advocate for authoritarianism. and domination systems. And that's their wiring. Women, when they're let loose of when sex is untethered from consequences, will behave in exploitative and promiscuous ways. Men, if will see that, and their tendency is to, they're going to fight for women. The old ape has to beat up all the other apes, and um, and so they'll create a domination system that's designed to organize access to women, and and so um, yeah. So I don't know where I was going with that. So this is a solution that I see that's not consciously being promoted. And this is, and I did a lot of work on democracy and anti-authoritarianism. And so by addressing some of these men's issues, I think we can go a long way towards that. I think really the struggle, the division between women and men is killing our democracy. Um, and so And one thing that the men's rights movements, if they have an issue with anything, it's an issue with equality. They want equality. There really isn't. Our relationships are not equal. The fact that men have to die and are sent to war is not equal. The fact that men do more dangerous jobs is not equal. The idea that somehow we need parity in earnings, but then not look at the type of work that men are doing. Men are doing different types of work. They're not look at the consistency of men being in the workforce. The fact that a man needs to work, that women classify men by their job, by their occupation. How many times I've been classified as an attorney, you know, and then one of the first things a woman wants to know about you. Okay? So all of these things, you know, it's not based on equality. The fact that women wants a man who's superior to him, wants a man who earns more than him, it's not equality. Our system is not based on equality. So I think I've always tried to make a difference. I've always dealt with my issues publicly. I did the People Against Pornography thing. I, so that's part of my mission, sort of, is to reach out. And now I'm helping men. So, I like poker. I've been playing poker, but but now I feel like I've done a lot of that stuff, and I don't want to make the woman my mission. I don't want to make the woman the center of my life. That cannot be allowed. I have to have a mission. The woman has to be supportive of my mission. That's just the way it works. And so I got a fly right in front of me here. Um, so yeah, so right now I'm doing better. I'm in a better position, and I should be happy. Although I've been still ruminating about, and these are more recent events. I mean, this type of exploitation and abuse, it's just endless. You know, endless, endless. Um, you know, entitled to our money, entitled to us to buy things for them. Privileged, and thinking that any man who has concerns, obviously, is sort of sexist. A lot of anti-male propaganda, right-wing propaganda. I mean, the world is in an uproar, really. Um, Authoritarianism on the rise. You know, um, yeah, the world
It's
is
messed
kind of,
up.
yeah, messed up, depressing place.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so which
It's
is,
not it's like everybody's responsibility now to work on understanding each other. Like we had conversation, like
mhm,
I never knew a lot about you and I didn't research at all because I was waiting for this moment when we can uh, talk, and
Okay.
I can I was curious to listen to you. So
Okay.
you
Great.
started with the conversation. You started the conversation by saying I hated women, which comes from your experience. And what I did as a woman was listen to your experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I cannot change that, but as another woman who is listening, who is present when you are sharing about your experiences, my responsibility is to listen to your story, listen to your journey.
Right.
And that's what I did. So you are
And
definitely talking from your experience, which is very, very, how would I say, which is true, which is
yeah.
true. Your views are your views because of a certain experience. And I cannot judge it as wrong, right. It is your life, it has happened, it's a fact.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
can only do that much by listening. And I'm not here to correct somebody, but I can definitely be with them when they're sharing what they're sharing
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so
And so.
it is everybody's responsibility. It's not only you and me, we are also part of it, but everybody all together. And I don't think equality is a good word at this point, because whoever is capable of what they are doing, like,
Mhm.
it's also culturally affected,
Mhm.
rooted in culture, like where women are not allowed to work,
Mhm.
where women are
Mhm.
allowed to be in a certain way. So there
Yeah.
are so many different cultures, there are so many different set of rules, there are so many different ways the society run. But coming to a solution, we each of us have our own responsibility and
Mhm.
consciousness, you know
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
something that happened to you. um, in spite of that, you are what you are today,
Mhm.
because you wanted to do something from which you can protect others from not
Mhm.
getting into that ditch.
Right. Right. And so many
So
women, right? So many women don't really listen to men. The Democratic Party had this program, which you don't hear about much. It's just a flash in the pan, speaking to American men. But really, I think before you speak to American men, you're going to need to listen to Western men.
well,
You're going to need
how
to
about
listen.
I say the same thing, like when you talk to women.
Yeah, but and it's true, and we have, and this is the thing I have. I minored in women's studies. I went to the feminist studies class. I read about women's studies. I became involved in the women's movement. Men have listened. Men have listened. It's just a note. So many women, you're talking to them, but they're not hearing a word you say. You know, and I'm sure women have that experience with men too.
Yes,
But
everybody is speaking from their experience, so we cannot really come
yeah,
to a solution, to a common thing.
right. But
So,
yeah, but
yeah.
I think listening to men and actually, because so many women, their immediate reaction is when men talk about men's rights or anything. Oh, you can't have it. You have all the rights. And their mind goes someplace and they don't really hear us. And then, like for instance, you say men die for women. A lot of women would pop up with women die in childbirth. You're dismissing what the man just said about men dying, right? So the
Yeah.
the thing is that a lot, in their minds, their plight will always be worse than
We are
men's.
all wired. Let's take it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
In a
and
certain way.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they're wired so that everything comes to women because women had to care for the children, so everything had to come to them. So the way they treat men is related to that sort of that, that man's there to provide for me and my children, not the other way around, you know. And so it's a difficult situation, but I'm getting better. Let's just say I'm getting better. I think, and
Wonderful.
I'm in a better situation now than I've been before. And now I can have a wife. Now I can have a woman, whereas
See,
before I
we
couldn't.
started the conversation with I hate women, and we are ending the conversation with him saying, now I have a woman, now I have someone to share my life with.
Right,
And
right,
I think we have come a full circle from,
right.
uh,
I hate
yep.
to say that. I hate to say that I hate women because that could be perceived as
No, no,
misogyny.
no, 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 no. I just wanted to
Dislike them,
say that, no, no, I want to actually um,
but it
say
may be
that
true.
no, I, because of your experience, that's what I'm
Yeah,
saying. As a
yeah,
child, if you have this experience, then a child only knows hate and love. We have to see that. We
yeah,
have to see that, you know.
yeah. And
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 I'm
yeah,
really grateful that you spoke your heart out, you
hmm,
know.
yeah,
I'm not filtering, I'm not judging, but I'm just listening because it is your experience. You felt what you felt.
yeah, and feel what I feel.
Yeah, you feel what you feel, depending on what you experienced.
Yeah,
But now at 61,
hmm,
look how life provides us opportunities and directions and
hmm,
enlightenment to
hmm,
take us to a better position, you know,
yeah, hmm,
to
yeah,
take us to be a better human being. Forget
yes,
about men, women. We are human, you know, in
right,
our essence. So I have seen this in this entire 1 hour conversation, the transformation. So life is always offering opportunities.
hmm,
That's what I learned from your experience, you know. And anybody who is listening to this, they should listen to the transformation.
yeah, yeah. And I think,
So
yeah,
that's all.
yeah, and I think, yeah, don't be so judgmental about men. I mean, we all have stereotypes about each
Yes.
other, you know, and there's this idea of men perpetrator, women victim, and that we're going to have to somehow overcome because it's
Yeah.
not a one-sided situation like that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay. I think we are in a very good situation to end this conversation today.
yeah. Thank
And
you.
I would like to thank you, Richard, for sharing your journey. And it was a wonderful experience for me. Not wonderful, transformational, I would say, because um, I could listen.
Awesome.
I could listen to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm happy for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste. All right.